Let's create a pivotal impact. Friends in the industry. So as the transportation industry continues to integrate software and systems into our operations, a crucial step when making a decision on which technologies to integrate is selecting the right service provider. So what I mean by this is when you're completing your research, you really want to do your homework on the service provider and the products that they're offering. So far too often I see the cost being the only deciding factor when integrating software and not enough focus on the service itself. So will the service provider treat you with respect after you sign the contract? Is there beginning to end support as well as their after? These are just a couple of things of what I really think you need to consider when selecting a service provider, which is why I'm excited for today's conversation as I speak with Mike Bertamini, CEO of Pioneer Safety Solutions. So I'm Josh Hannabury, the host of the Truck Focus podcast. If this is the first time you've ever checked out one of our podcast episodes, I welcome you to our community and thank you to all of our dedicated listeners. I highly recommend that you like this episode, share it out, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. So during our conversation, Mike walks us through his exciting journey in the transportation industry and discusses the ongoing electronic mandates for Canadian federal carriers on what's required for their ELD. Throughout the interview, Mike also highlights why Pioneer Safety Solutions is an excellent service provider, helping a number of organizations with their telematics integration and more. I encourage you to learn more about Pioneer by visiting pioneersafetysolutions.com. So I look forward to the impact this conversation is going to have. Let's get to it. One. Hey, Mike, super stoked for our conversations today. Really excited that you joined the Truck Focus podcast, and I really value just a couple of things that we've talked about prior to our interview that I'm excited to talk about today. I really value your perspective on people and on leadership, but also in the telematics and ELD space. I think there's a lot that you offer that needs to be told, and I'm excited that we can use this platform to really dive into that. So yeah, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and communicating with the folks out there the importance of really looking at human behavior in everything we do, and that's I think where the focus as we progress through the maturity of the whole process. I think that's the focusing on the people will be the key to success in the future.
Yes, yeah, I agree. And it's nice from Pioneer Safety Solutions perspective, and then obviously you as a professional in this space, you guys consistently speak on impacting people. And I think that's a really high value point when our listeners are like, hey, who is Mike? Who is Pioneer Safety Solutions? We want to really represent the fact that, hey, we care about people. We care about improving culture. And I think that's just a really important takeaway because a lot of consultants, as we know, are really focused on, okay, here's my credit card reader, tap your card, please. And, oh, the contract signed, I'm going to walk away now versus, yeah, the offerings that you guys have. I think it's super important that we highlight that from the start.
Absolutely. At Pioneer, people are your best, brightest commodity that makes a business run smoothly. Having the right people in seat is the difference between success and failure, and nurturing their abilities and giving them competencies, not just training. Training is check the box to really understand if folks are competent. That's the piece that I think a lot of businesses miss. And at the end of the day, it might get them into a little bit of a hot water down the road when things do go south.
Yeah, I agree. And as we were talking about prior to hitting record, we've seen it. We've been there. You're like, what is that guy doing over there? Shouldn't he be at a doctor's right now? Or are you sure he actually understood the process of lifting or this and that? So again, I'm just excited to dive into that. So to start us off, Mike, why don't you kind of give us a rundown on who you are, but also highlight some of the experiences you've had in the transportation as well as the oil and gas industry?
Well, currently I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Pioneer Safety Solutions. So going way back out of university, I started with Coca-Cola, started as a truck driver, delivery driver, and ended up getting my back injured. And I figured, hey, I can't be on the trucks forever. So I started moving my way up through the organization, and Coca-Cola was great for giving people the opportunity that if they wanted to advance their career, it was there for them. So I moved in through distribution supervisor, then became distribution manager for Calgary. A few years later, I became the distribution manager for the Prairies, which was Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan, and into Thunder Bay area, a little bit of Ontario. And my final role was supply chain manager for Western Canada. So from Vancouver Island out to Thunder Bay, I was accountable for the warehouse, distribution, fleet, and making sure all that ran smoothly and deliveries were made on time, on budget, all that good stuff. Then I spent a little bit of time in the LTL world, less than truckload, where I was a branch manager for Consolidated Fast Freight in Calgary. Good experience there, learning about the challenges with and getting perspective on the challenges within the less than truckload world, as well as the full truckload, and just that the margin percentages of making money at the end of the day are pretty slim. And I think that's one of the challenges that the industry is going to face in the future. After that, I spent the last 12 years with Shell Canada. I was the road safety lead for upstream in Canada. So really the getting the oil out of the ground and into the refineries was the space that I occupied. What was really great about Shell was I got to travel the world. I got to see different cultures and how those different cultures really impact an individual and how they perceive safety. And there's a lot that goes into it, but it was the start of my path to really understand human behavior and how our past experiences drive what we do as individuals. And as we talked about earlier, learning about human behavior, or it's sometimes called human factors, if you can understand what makes people tick, then it might be able to really help companies understand how to manage those people, get the right person in the right seat in the organization. And that's what we want to deliver through Pioneer is helping companies achieve, optimum performance by having trained, competent people in the right jobs, but supporting them and enabling them to successfully do their jobs on a daily basis.
Powerful. That's an incredible story too, where when I think of the transportation industry, one thing that I often resonate with is opportunity. And you're living proof of that, where starting as a professional driver, something happened that made you think, hey, this probably isn't the long-term game. Working for an excellent organization that empowered you, groomed you, gave you opportunity. And it's nice to see that success trail, because I think success leaves clues, which means that you would have had some form of mentorship, good structure, that kind of things, which obviously led you to a point where Fast Freight to Shell, traveling the world, identifying all these different opportunities. I think that's really powerful. And it really speaks volumes to when you're investing into yourself and you have I'll use the word confidence to say, hey, I want to try that. Hey, I'll take that training, just the different doors that are actually open. I think it's exciting when myself, like you got a couple of years on myself in your journey, and I'm trying to navigate through different spaces. And I'm like, man, you're a great mentor to me. This is great. Okay, awesome. Oh, this was a stumbling block, but I think that's really important that you're able to do that. And you can showcase that with humility. And also like the fact that you talked about the people, obviously going overseas and experiencing different cultures, different practices, and how you mentioned getting the right people in the seat. I think there's a lot there that we can impact today.
Absolutely. Mentorship, I think, is an opportunity that companies don't always seize on. They're always concerned about overspending and a budget. And I think success can be had by mentoring people and helping them advance their career. I had a manager at Coca-Cola who the most powerful statement he ever made to me was, when he looks back on his career, it's not about whether he hit budgets or had great sales volumes, whatever the case may be. It was about people and where they ended up was more important to him. So that's something that I've really lived with. And, that's why myself and my partner, Bob Briggs, started Pioneer, was because we both understand if you impact people, and it's a ripple effect, you impact one person and then they can carry it on. And that's what I've always tried to promote with my people that have worked for me is I want to help you, but I also want you to help somebody else move their career.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's incredible that a mentor at the time and a supervisor was able to share that with you. So that's going to be one of my questions. Is something that really stands out is the people side, and that's really where I resonate well, is the uplifting of others and yeah, being there for each other. So it's nice to know that okay, that was something that was a installed in you through your journey, but then some advice through a mentor that you respected that really shifted, I would say, your outlook, and then you're able to back it up. You weren't, so I think sometimes doing the right thing is the hardest thing, and sometimes doing the right thing is what's best for the human being I'm interacting with and not so much the budget. And we see that all the time when companies are forcing people to break the law. I don't care about your weights and your hours, get the job done. It's like, no, 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 let's take a step back and let's value the people. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where short-sightedness, about today will impact companies negatively. As you stated there, somebody is over hours and they're in essence somewhat forced to make those deliveries. If something goes south, that that one delivery could cost a company a lot of money if an incident occurs. I look at in the U.S. where there's nuclear verdicts where their companies are being held in court into multi-million-dollar lawsuits, and in terms is now affecting insurance rates, and companies are trying to stay profitable, and insurance becomes a big challenge for them.
Yeah, yeah. Insurance is a an interesting conversation, and we're both fortunate. We speak with insurance professionals and insurance organizations quite frequently, and listening to their perspectives on risk, understanding the flip side of those that are executing it and mitigating the risk. I think that's a really interesting spot from a consultant, but just someone that's been in the industry and been in the game for a long time. You're kind of like, yeah, okay, but nuclear verdicts are scary, and I don't hope that becomes a common term in the Canadian market. I've heard of one kind of creeping in Ontario that an industry leader or an insurance leader, sorry, was speaking on. But yeah, I definitely can see just the misfortune of that happening more and more and more in Canada, because sometimes, and we talked about this off camera too, or off recording, is when things are going really well, people talk about safety all the time. You got the parades going and everything's good. But the moment that something could impact operations, you could see the conversation shifting. And it's like, okay, well, insurance is no different than, say, workers' compensation, in the sense where they're protecting you. They're going to have to pay out if something happens. So you got to keep your ducks in a row. The where I wanted to go with that too is we've talked also on the right technologies. And I really wanted to dive in from Pioneer's perspective as well as yours on technologies. But have you always been the guy that said, hey, there's a new technology coming into play. I can see how this technology is going to help us if it's safe, be safer, improve the operations, lower our risk. Has that always been your mindset? You've appreciated technology, or did it take some grooming?
It took some grooming. My first experience in, we can talk about in-vehicle monitoring, the behaviors of individuals, and cameras. I know that speaking with companies in the past and individuals, cameras are really feared, and people don't fear change, they fear the unknown. And the perception is that it's going to take away my privacy and whatnot. But I've had experiences where companies have used cameras, and once you get a driver in essence out of hot water because you're able to have that video, drivers change their tune very quickly and see the value in it. As well, if companies use technology correctly, you can reward those who do the right thing, whether it's a driver who makes a hard braking at a intersection because somebody drove through a red light. Yes, it's a hard braking event, but that's where you should be congratulating that driver on using defensive driving skills. But technology, I think it's important that companies take hard looks at it, and it's not just cameras, IVMS, ELD. It's also the technology that's available now in vehicles, whether it's a light vehicle or heavy goods vehicle, automatic braking, those type of things. Once again, companies often view that as an additional cost. However, I personally have had experiences where that automatic braking saved my bacon, and it saved a lawsuit or saved a collision. So once again, touching back on insurance, I promote all that technology. I promote putting your people in the safest vehicles possible. And often those safe vehicles do cost more upfront, but I view it as investing in your people once again.
Yes. Yeah, and those are some really good points, especially to our listeners, because I think as most of our listeners, I'd say, are in the Canadian market. And I would say a lot of technologies, especially to the smaller businesses, it's new. And I like how you define that it's not scary, it's the unknown. That part of it, it's like there's a lot of unknowns. What does this button do? What do you mean I have to plug this in? Oh crap, it came undone. And what's this GPS going to tell me? Like there's a lot of unknowns. And that's another thing that I really value with you and Pioneer is well, you can really explain and simplify those unknowns to show the value side. And yeah, there's a cost to it, but you can also show the ROI on that side. And I think it's a really special gift in the consulting space because not everyone understands technology and not everyone approves of technology. I really do. I live in a space where I'm an advocate for automation, for digitalization, for the right systems, for the right processes. So it's nice that we're aligned with that. But it's nice to know you had a journey to get there too. And it took the experiences of, well, ABS saved my bacon. And yeah, I did a hard break because someone blew the red. It's like, those are things I agree with you. We need to celebrate. And from an operations perspective too, like for me, an idle shutdown, eliminating idle in your fleets whenever, and I guess at any point that's possible, but also, so from a savings perspective, but then a rewards perspective, I really align with your way of thinking too.
Absolutely. You just touched on idling. As companies, larger publicly traded companies are being forced down the path of the environmental governance and social requirements, ESG. Your company's emissions are now being monitored, and companies are needing to prove to the marketplace that they are doing all they can to manage the emissions. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize, and in the oil and gas space, most of the vehicles used are pickups, and I've seen it where if individuals aren't paying for the fuel, they'll idle their truck 24 hours a day and maybe only use it and actually actively drive it 4 hours a day. So it's a lot of emissions going out the tailpipe, but you're actually damaging the engine, and people don't recognize the fact that we're asked to change your oil every 8,000 kilometers, but in actuality, if you are idling your vehicle continuously, you need to change your oil sooner, because that for every hour that idle occurs, you're putting on actual mileage on the engine. So that's what we want to help companies understand. The challenges, people say they can't turn their engine off. Well, put automatic starters in all your vehicles that the driver can turn it on every 5 minutes every hour. That type of thing is can bring value and make life a little bit easier on a individual as well as the company and their assets.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I know we're both very familiar with the wonderful north of Canada, and I remember the coldest I ever experienced with the wind chill was -58, -59, and I was dealing with water, and I just remember being, what am I doing? What am I doing? And you'd be freezing, but your saving grace was literally hopping in the pickup because you knew it was running. But then ultimately, yeah, you look on the flip side in the bigger picture, it's like, okay, yeah, there's pros and cons. Like you said, an idle or an auto start, so that way your vehicle can start when you need it to start. It's important. But yeah, my views have changed for sure since days in the field. Some be a little more operational now on the bigger picture. But I think it's just those programs where people, they don't really, again, I'm not disrespecting the industry, but I think often they don't think about the overall maintenance costs compared to the cost of something like an auto start, or the cost of an idle shutdown, or the cost of a GPS tracker, that kind of thing. So I think, yeah, just the direction you guys are going is super crucial as our industry just continues to adapt to technologies, but also as more technologies become available. And that's really wanted to go with Pioneer Safety Solutions. Yeah, we were actually on a call yesterday, late day, and it's really exciting to see the direction that Pioneer is going as an industry leader, because there's so many different types of technologies. If we're talking temperature control and reefer heater, you're talking about GPS tracking, fuel monitoring, driver behavior, like there's so many different ways, but you're able to in a sense, yeah, be the leader in that space. So can you kind of walk us through from Pioneer's perspective, where are you, I guess, most effective helping your clients and future clients with technology integration?
We view when we sit with a client that we need to understand what are their pain points and start understanding their business model, where they want to go and what they want to achieve. Often, as we talked about a little earlier, risk management companies may not even understand where their risks lie, and that's where we want to, have those conversations and then truly get an understanding of what a client needs. We are not about selling the biggest, best, most expensive technology features to a company that doesn't need them. We're not about making millions of dollars and becoming the biggest IVMS provider in the world. We want to have relationships with clients where we can help them understand the technology, the benefits to it, as well as the drawbacks, because unintended consequences is something that a lot of leaders don't always view. And I'll give you an example. My past life with IVMS, the company got a lot of the speeding events under control, had a significant risk. I think our speeding events dropped by 40 or 50%. But the next item that the focus came was harsh braking. Hard braking is it's an indicator that there's opportunities for the driver to evaluate his or her behavior in terms of, are they following too close? Are they driving fast, too fast for the conditions? What we learned, though, was one leader told his team, I don't want to see any more hard braking events. And that's firstly not the way you want to hold a conversation, because it in essence drives the behavior of your people. What we found was then drivers started to run lights. Drivers would do things that we don't want them to do, and running a red light is not something you obviously want staff to do. And when you question the driver why they did it, it's because they simply didn't want to have a negative conversation with their supervisor. Going back to that supervisor and explaining that, he wasn't aware that by a simple statement, he changed the behavior of his team to be a very negative outcome. Instead of coaching the people and helping them understand that they need to maybe leave that extra distance between them and the vehicle in front, that type of thing is where conversations need to go.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key point too, because it's not a new technology, but I think the language is becoming more common, so it could be perceived as new. And there's a couple of things there that you highlighted. So I like living in the space where I don't want to be a tyranny leader. I want to be an empathetic leader. And to be empathetic, you have to listen and understand, okay, what is it that you're going through? And yeah, when someone says no more hard brakes or no more this, it's like, okay, but there's actually a time and a place where it's needed, because I just saved a life and I don't want to fear the negative conversation and or possibly write up because I had 2 in 1 trip. It's like, no, let's understand why they're happening in the first place. And then that's, you talked about training and competency prior. That's a training opportunity, but that you can also follow up, and that's a competency opportunity where it's like, okay, does our fleet, does our professional drivers actually understand, and are they living the culture of, if a hard break happens, we'll stay on that conversation, this is why it happened. And let's celebrate that. Let's celebrate the fact that you did not crash into that distracted driver. They were 18 years old. They were doing something they shouldn't have been doing, and they blew a red light. Let's celebrate the fact that you probably just saved a life because you're a 100,000-pound tanker rolling down the road. That's a really empathetic approach, instead of, yeah, the opposite that we often see is, well, I don't want to see any more of those. And you better hammer on those that are doing it. And I don't think that's the right approach. So it's nice to hear you say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's about what we want to promote with our clients when they're engaging their professional drivers, in that the conversation always can start about the incident, but it's human behavior. When that person had that hard braking, where was their head at? Where was their mind at? Were they actually focused on driving, or were they worried about that they had to get to a certain location by a certain time, and how are they going to shortcut their way in there. Once again, it's just having your mind on task. And we all live lives outside of work, and people can be distracted. They've got a sick family member, or a driver was up and he's somewhat fatigued because he was up at night with an infant that was crying. So once you have those conversations and really tie it into the person and not the behavior, it's about how can we help that person and understand what's going on in their life. And a prime example is when a prior event, this was around a speeding event in my past life, where a driver was exceeding the speed limit by probably 30 or 40 kilometers an hour. And when the report got back to the manager, immediately they wanted to terminate this employee's tied with the company. And I got involved, and we had the conversation with leadership, and they were very determined. They had already gone to HR. They were going to terminate this person, have the conversation with them. The individual was a younger person, new to the working world. He was rushing to the hospital because his wife was in labor. And when you have that conversation, instead of the person being encouraged to have open conversations with their boss and ask for some time off, or at least make the manager aware that his wife was due, would have had the ability to have alternate work arrangements made. Maybe the person was given some time off, or maybe you put the person in a position where they're not having to drive a significant distance to get to the hospital. And once again, it's all about having open conversations and the human factor, and not immediately jumping to conclusions.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal point. And I think that just, again, I like bringing it back to, okay, who is the leader that I'm having this conversation with? And I like that you've been able to navigate through those experiences in your journey, because then you can really live it with your current clients. Because again, that's a really fast response. Or post incident, oh, the world's ending, here's a policy. It's like, do you need to add one more policy to your other 400 policies, or is there something else you just need to change? But I think, yeah, being able to have those conversations from both directions as the employee, boots on the ground. Hey, look, this is what's happening with my family. Is there anything we can do? As then on the flip side, as when you're in management, you're in corporate, you can say, yeah, okay, I understand. Like, and you can make some decisions instead of it just being almost fear led and, oh, I better shut up and do my job or I won't have a job type attitude, like we've seen far too often in different industries.
You're correct. One of the things that I truly believe in is psychological safety, and what that really encompasses is having a work environment where management is willing to hear things they don't want to hear. People will often, and I'm sure we've all experienced it, where people won't tell the truth to a leader because they know the leader won't be receptive, and it becomes a very negative experience. Instead of learning about something that may not be going in the right direction, how to correct it, instead people hide it, and that's not a healthy culture. You got to have two-way conversation, and people need to be able to express themselves. And being able to express yourself, have the sense that the company actually cares about you and cares about your perspective. And I've been in places where management did not want to hear your perspective, and it's a caustic environment. And that's where you start having incidents occurring, and then management wonders why people are getting hurt, or damage to cargo, or damage to vehicles, and they're never made aware of it. And it's because people hide it. And that's what you really need to have. It takes a while to get something like psychological safety involved in an organization and then get buy-in for it. But it really takes a leader who's willing to drop any form of I guess I'm searching for the right word, but they need to drop their guard and
Yes.
expose themselves.
Yes.
And that's one of the things where leaders, being human, show your folks you're human. You make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We need to learn from our mistakes. One of the things with Pioneer, Bob and I have really promoted with the folks that work with us is, if you see something that I'm not doing right, or you think I can improve on, tell me. I welcome the feedback. I can't get better unless somebody tells me that I may be lacking in one area or another. And I welcome that. It took me a long time to swallow the pill and your pride and all that type of stuff. But once again, that then becomes a psychological safety. I didn't know it at the time, but I was promoting psychological safety when people came to me and said, hey, this is not the way I think it could be. Maybe your meetings aren't, when you hold meetings with your staff, it's became a one-way conversation. I was telling instead of actively asking. Somebody said to me after a meeting that they found my meetings held little value. And that was eye-opening for me. And that was where I was able to change my behaviors and had feedback from the team, and our meetings, the change in what we were able to accomplish was immense.
Yes.
And it's once again just leaders being willing to drop the facade, I guess, of being a certain type of person and really embracing change.
Yes. Yeah, there's a few things there too, Mike. So I think I like the slogan that, I don't know which coach actually said it, but we're going to leave the egos at the door. And there's a difference between attack and criticism. So if your criticism is being in a form of attack, like I want to attack Mike, I'm going to belittle you, you have every right to have your back against the wall and to navigate the conversation in a certain way. But if the criticism leads to a positive outcome, that's actually a pivotal moment. And that's where I try and really focus on is, okay, what's someone saying to me? Is that actually going to make me better? Or are they just venting at me because they didn't like something I said? But being professional enough to actually navigate that space and say, okay, maybe my meeting style needs to change, or my leadership this, or my voice in this. But I think that's really receptive. And I think a lot of leaders, they need a dose of that type of reality to say, hey, none of us are perfect. We stumbled along the way. And yeah, okay, we took that course, and okay, yeah, we have that relationship and we killed it in that interview. Great. But we're not perfect and we can always improve. And I think, yeah, keeping that in, I guess, perspective is really important. And then another thing that you talked about too is, so psychological safety, I really live in that space as well, especially when you're thinking about retention. And some of your best recruiters are your current staff. So if you're a current employee of an organization and you actually feel like they care about you as a person, you have a reasonable relationship with your colleagues and your supervisors, and you're like, yeah, I don't mind going to work every day, they're going to tell people that. So it doesn't matter what industry, and if it's transportation, oil and gas, retail, whatever, if you enjoy enough going to work every day, you're like, I have a casual relationship with people, that is a huge retention for them, but also from a recruitment stance where they're going to be your advocates out in the streets to say, hey, yeah, come work at this place, like these guys are great, or man, my consultant Pioneer, they really care about me as a person and they're helping me shift the culture of my company while they integrate this. Like, let's do business with them in this space. Like, there's a lot of wins when you start thinking about the psychological factors, the human factors, and I really live in that space. So it's just nice to hear that perspective. I did want to dive into the ELD conversation a little bit, but before we do that, can you drop the website? Where do people go to learn more about Pioneer?
Our website is www.pioneersafetysolutions.com.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the conversation this far. Mike and the team at Pioneer Safety Solutions, they recently included an article in our Truck Focus newsletter, The Value of a Robust Telematics Program, that I highly recommend that you check out. I've included the link in the show notes. Let's get back to the episode. Awesome. Okay, and I'll make sure to include that in the show notes too. I think that's super important for people to know, though. Pioneer, definitely recommend, like I've been saying through this conversation, having a call with Mike, having a call with Bob. Baz is a great guy. Eric's a great guy. There's some really strong people on the team just to talk about things like this, because from a consulting perspective, it is different. And from a industry leader's perspective, it's definitely, they're leading the future. So I think that's really just important to highlight. So when we're talking ELDs, and again, we talked about this off camera, I think actually during our first couple conversations, the implementation process is politely burdensome. It's an interesting process. There's lots of wins, there's lots of struggles, but that's my opinion, but what's your take on the ELD process? And if now is the right time, can you kind of highlight where you guys are at with your ELD?
Yeah, our ELD solution is gone through the Transport Canada compliance review, and we are very close to having approval process put forward. So we're really excited about that we're going to be able to offer an approved solution. And our solution works across into the US and down into Mexico. So for any carriers that are traveling north and south, we can help them out. In terms of implementing ELD, once again, it's about having the conversations prior to implementation, having a plan, the conversations, making sure employees understand why these are being implemented. Yes, it's being put in place because of government requirements. However, there's significant benefits to having ELD, and it can help those drivers that have in the past maybe been strong-armed into breaking the law, and this way ELD removes that in some essence. But when implementing it, the company needs to have a very structured plan. They need to have milestones and understand when those milestones aren't met. You need to have plans to address that. So it's all about planning. It's about making sure all your folks are on board and understand the challenges that you face. And that's what we really want to help our customers with, is to definitely have a very clear vision of where they want to go and support them through that. And then once the ELD is implemented, our customer support is 24/7, 365. We actually have with our ELD, we have forgive me, I'm not a tech guy, but it's an MDM. And it gives us the ability, when a driver phones and says, hey, I can't figure this out, help me. Usually we're not dealing with drivers that are tech support gurus. They're struggling, a lot of them, or tech is not on their side. We can actually log in and see that driver's screen live. So we're able to actually talk the driver through and cutting down that amount of time that the truck's down. In essence, we can get a driver back up and running in minutes versus a scenario where you're trying to have a conversation with somebody to tell them you need to be in a certain screen, and the driver says, well, I'm there, and yet they're not.
Yes.
And it becomes very, very difficult. And I've had it where people tell you, the tech support tells you need to do X, Y, and Z, and you think you're doing it, but you're actually not. So with an MDM, we see that screen live, and we can actually help the driver walk through it immediately. So that's one of the features. And the feedback we've had from some of the customers we've been working with, the drivers love it. They didn't realize it could be so simple, so easy. And it's, once again, that psychological safety, when they know they can pick up the phone and have an immediate positive result, that gets buy-in, and the driver having a positive result, positive interaction that helps them through the challenges of understanding ELD, they're going to tell the other drivers. And then it spreads like wildfire, where then the uptake and the acceptance of technology becomes the calling card for a company.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's key. I think empowering people to make a decision. Hey, I need help, and I'm not going to get judged because I'm asking for help. I'm actually going to be celebrated. That is going to go so far when you're talking about just the change. Paper to electronics, it can be scary. But if you think about all the wins, roadside inspection is, I think, from a driver's perspective, as well as force dispatch, those are two huge wins for drivers. And if you have a question, or I should say professional drivers, I'm sorry, but if you have a question, it's like, hey, I thought I was doing this right. We actually have real life support, because I've been there, and I'm like, I am on that screen. And I've been told, yeah, you must not be. It's like, no, I am. Like, don't insult my intelligence. Don't challenge me. I'm telling you, this is what I'm looking at. On the flip side, when you can actually log in at the exact same time, and then you, as the individual that is the professional, can make a joke about yourself, you can show a little, I guess, grace. And, oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot you had to press this button first. You just destroyed any conflict. And now you're like, oh, okay, that's simple. But then, yeah, professional drivers, they talk, and they don't even have to be on the same company. If they're on the same product, or Facebook. Like I see it all the time, Facebook groups. Hey, I'm on this product. I hate it. Which one should I switch to? And then you get 900 other opinions. It's like, well, if someone took the time to actually advocate for you, help you, that way you're not breaking the law, but you're also saving the carrier time and frustration at the same time. I think that's a huge win. And again, that's just a really nice feature that Pioneer as a company can offer.
Yeah, I appreciate your statement there around communication between drivers, because it is very true. The positive, no matter what a positive experience encompasses, people talk. You know, you always wonder why a certain person drives a Chevy versus a Ford versus a Dodge. It's personal experiences.
Yes.
And that's that personal experience is what we're looking to have with people and connecting with people.
I think that's awesome. So if you're looking, I'm envisioning our audience, and I love the fact that we have a wide range of professional drivers that are really interested to know what's going on in the industry. We have carriers and supervisors, as well as suppliers. So I identify as a leader as anyone that's able to make an impact in the life of another. So keep that in mind when I'm asking this question. So what is one piece of advice that you would share to a leader, regardless of title, that they're trying to become comfortable with this change? They're integrating different technologies. What's one piece of advice? Is it to breathe? Is it to be confident that you're going in the right direction? Or what's something that you would say, hey, you're a leader in this space. This is what you should know because I've been there.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we have the ability to bring to our clients, is that we, as a leader, you can sit down with somebody, and I can talk to a CEO of a company who employees may somewhat fear, and I can call them out on it, because I'm not going to have the same type of potential repercussions as an employee. And having the ability to do that, I can become a voice for employees. But what I would say to leaders is you need to approach everything with humility. Show the folks that you're human and you want the best for them as well as your company, because at the end of the day, everybody's in business to make money. But being able to have positive experiences with employees is huge. When it goes to implementing anything, companies need to really embrace management of change process. And for a lot of industries, that's foreign language. In the oil and gas industry, it's regular type of thing, whether you're implementing something very minor or something very major. You need to look at all the challenges that could lie in your path as well, making certain that you're looking at all aspects. And by implementing certain technology, is that going to affect another part of your business? And quite often, people don't think the whole process through until you end up in a position where you stop functioning as a company because somewhere along the line, somebody didn't think that there was going to be a challenge in that area. So it's important to have a well laid out plan where you're really understanding what barriers you could come up against.
That's awesome. No, I really appreciate that, Mike. And I appreciate our conversation today. I know that, again, something I admire about you as a leader, as well as Pioneer as an organization, is that you're really an advocate for people and you're able to speak up if something's not right. You also have the vision and the experience to understand when something's not right, or when how to celebrate a win when something is right. So I do think that's super valuable, and I appreciate that you shared that. So as we just come to a close today, were there any final thoughts that you'd like to share, as well as if you could drop the website one more time where people can go to learn more about Pioneer?
So the website is pioneersafetysolutions.com. And for me, my final thoughts would be, as if you haven't figured it out, is that human connection. It's really about having people, no matter where they sit in the organization, having input, having the ability to speak freely and truly not fear any form of repercussions. And that, I think, is what's going to make change in a culture. Safety culture is what's going to drive companies to be successful in the future. And investing in safety, There's always dollars behind it, but any company that has done it and done it well, they understand it. At the end of the day, it actually saves them money. And that's where a lot of the transportation industry players, it's an opportunity, let's put it that way. So if anybody ever wants to pick up the phone and contact us, myself or Bob or anybody on our team, and just have a discussion around what we offer, please do so.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. And I've included the just your show, or in the show notes, I'm sorry, the website, the LinkedIn page, as well as the email and the phone number, the 1-800 number there. So I absolutely agree. Call to action is, if you are in a position that you're like, hey, I need to integrate this piece of technology, or do I need to integrate this piece of technology? If you're looking at a cultural improvement, if you're looking at situations where it's like, man, things are just not going right, I need some trusted leaders to come in and integrate some systems into our processes, whatever it is, highly recommend that you connect with Mike in Pioneer Safety Solutions. Mike, honestly, super grateful that you took the time to hop on this morning. Was really looking forward to our podcast interview based off of our other conversations and just the leadership that you're offering to our industry. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity. So again, thanks, Mike. Really appreciate your time today.
Oh, I appreciate your time too, Josh, and giving us the platform to express ourselves and what we want to help the industry improve. And at the end of the day, it's about getting people home safely and not having any life-altering events make the negative impact on lives.
That's awesome. Yeah, Mike, that was awesome. So yeah, thanks again, and have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you later.
Bye. Thanks.